So on that note, do you think that when there is interstate travel being opened up, airlines being opened up now, do you think there is a role for quarantine? Or do you think that it all comes down now to a lifestyle change, maintaining social distancing and clean hygiene, and that sort of quarantine can be reserved for those coming from red zone areas or for those who are symptomatic as such?
This is a great question again. So, in terms of what's happening, what to do with people who are traveling, uh, there are two things to consider. One is practical aspect. Two is what is ideally you should be doing. So, I'll tell you the practical aspects first. Every day, lakhs of passengers just come to Bangalore's International Airport. Then you have railway station. Then you have bus stops. These are only what you call the organized manner in which people come to this state. Now look at the borders. Already people are sneaking in through the fields. How do you then quarantine those if you want to? So lakhs of people, if you were to do an institutional quarantine, it is simply untenable for any system, not just India, anywhere in the world. So the next question is, would you suggest them home quarantine? That's an option. Now, if you are coming from an area where it is high burden and you're already not infected, the ideal would be to say, okay, why don't you stay at home for some time? And those are the guidelines that are being developed, not just home quarantine. A day will come when you're already seeing this in Mumbai. The health system will not be able to cater to all the people who are having COVID-19. So therefore, you'll have to say home isolation is also what is important. So looking at all of these, as we open up, as the travel is happening, I think the only way forward is syndromic surveillance and testing, nothing else. Because quarantining in institution is not feasible. Monitoring everybody doing quarantining physically is impossible. So the only way is use technology. And I think technology has been very instrumental in enforcing quarantine so far. In a democratic setup, using technology will have some problems around it. But then people, by and large, are very happy to use because if it is essential, they would rather use the technology, show that they're using it, and then do that essential travel rather than stay away from it.
Which brings me to the most controversial aspect, and in some ways the most heated topic of debate, herd immunity. So we had some epidemiologists across the world saying that herd immunity is the way to go forward, and there are others who absolutely say that it has no role.
I wouldn't want to contest what the expert epidemiologists from other places, other countries, and even the senior most in our own fraternity are saying. About novel coronavirus, we all have our own way of interpretation. But herd immunity, as epidemiologists known till today, is that you take a vaccine, it has immunogenic property, but it will have very limited pathogenic property. So therefore, what you're doing is eliciting an immune response and not necessarily anything to do with the mortality of people. So this is how we have learned herd immunity. And depending on what proportion, what is your R naught, based on that, you'll calculate what proportion of people are required to vaccinate to get herd immunity. So this is the only way we know herd immunity. But now we are using the concept of herd immunity in the context of getting infected with the virus itself. And Nitin, for me, it's very troubling. I wouldn't accept anything. I've had very different arguments, especially with some of the business groups that you discuss. They say, why do you want elderly to be protected? Anyway, they are not socially that useful. These are the kind of arguments when you put out in defending herd immunity. And number one. Number two, you look at the countries which believed in herd immunity. What happened to them? Barring one or two exceptions, the mortality has gone up like anything. And even where it has been sort of relatively successful, people are voluntarily following social distancing and other measures. So therefore, whether it is because of the herd immunity or these measures, nobody knows. So I wouldn't want to take risk. Yes, there are several arguments around it, but I am not for infecting or allowing infection to result in herd immunity. Just to extend the logic, I'll not take more than 30 seconds on this. If herd immunity through the virus and bacteria is what we believe, then why are we running our national immunization program? Why not expect people to be developing herd immunity for tuberculosis, polio, measles? We know the results. What used to happen before we started immunization program? That's the reason I want to stay away from the discussion on herd immunity. But this is a medical audience. I had to attend answering to this question, so I have answered it. I think it is unethical at this point of time.
Exactly. And I think it's also fair to our medical audience who are seeing that the seroprevalence studies of antibodies also which have been done show a very low seroprevalence rate, like I said, between 2 to 15%, which by no means can sustain or ensure a herd immunity. In fact, even the paper from Chinese health workers who are working in hospitals of corona, the antibody levels, the frequency of antibody levels were just not enough to guarantee herd immunity.
2 to 15% seroprevalence. If there are more than 16,000 deaths, imagine what will happen when 60% of the people get infected.
Exactly.
The numbers are unimaginable.
So I think as of now, we do not have any proof or evidence of herd immunity by a natural infection. And all we need to do is hope for a vaccine to come soon and look at how long the antibodies last to decide on the frequency of vaccines. In our last episode, we talk about the hunt for a vaccine and more importantly, what should be done for India's public health structure.